Maya loved English literature. But not just the books, even though she did love reading about faraway lands and daring heroes. She loved the way Professor Davies explained everything. He didn't just read from the book, he brought the stories to life. He'd pace back and forth, acting out scenes, his voice changing for each character. And lately, he'd been paying extra attention to Maya. After class, he'd often ask her to stay behind to discuss her essays. He'd lean in close, his voice low and encouraging, pointing out the clever things she'd written and offering suggestions to make her work even better. It made Maya's heart flutter a little. She knew it was probably just because she was a good student, but she couldn't help feeling a special connection with him. He seemed to really see her, to understand her thoughts and ideas. He even started calling her by her first name, which made her feel grown up and important. The other students noticed, too. Some of them gave her knowing glances, and a few even teased her about having a crush on the professor. Maya would blush and deny it, but secretly, she liked the attention. It felt good to be noticed, especially by someone as smart and kind as Professor Davies. He'd often choose her to answer questions in class, even the really hard ones. And when she got them right, he'd smile at her, a genuine, warm smile that made her feel like she could conquer the world. He'd even started asking about her interests outside of class. He remembered that she loved to draw and asked to see some of her artwork. Maya spent hours picking out her best drawings to show him, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wanted him to like them, to see that she was more than just a student in his class. She wanted him to see her as, well, she wasn't exactly sure what she wanted, but it was something more than just a student. She felt like she was in a movie. All of the signs were there. The lingering glances, the special attention, the inside jokes. This felt like the start of something really amazing and really unexpected. But then, things started to change. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. Professor Davies stopped lingering after class. He still called on her, but not as often, and he didn't smile at her quite the same way. The warmth seemed to have faded from his eyes. The after-class chats became shorter, more focused on the specific assignment. He wouldn't lean in as close, and he always kept a professional distance between them. Maya felt a chill, like a sudden cold wind had blown through the classroom. She started to worry that she had done something wrong. Had she been too forward? Too eager? Had she misinterpreted his kindness as something more than it was? She replayed every conversation in her head, searching for a clue, a sign that she had crossed a line. She even asked her best friend Chloe for advice. "Maybe he realized he was giving you too much attention," Chloe suggested. "Professors aren't supposed to have favorites, you know." Chloe's words stung. Was that all it was? Was she just another student to him? The thought made her stomach sink. She missed the way things had been, the feeling of being special, of being seen. She tried to recapture the magic, to bring back the warmth. She worked even harder on her essays, hoping to impress him. She asked insightful questions in class, trying to show him how much she appreciated his teaching. But nothing seemed to work. Professor Davies remained distant, polite but detached. He started to avoid eye contact with her. If their eyes did meet, he would quickly look away, as if he were afraid of what she might see. Maya felt like she was losing him, like he was slipping away right before her eyes. She wondered if someone had said something to him, if the other students had complained about his favoritism. Or maybe he had simply realized that his behavior was inappropriate. Whatever the reason, the change was undeniable, and it left Maya feeling confused, hurt, and strangely empty. The special feeling she had felt was gone, replaced by a cold, hard wall of professionalism. It was a wall she didn't know how to climb. And the worst part was, she didn't understand why it had been built in the first place. As the days ticked by, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The classroom felt colder, the lectures less engaging. She missed the spark that had been there, the connection she had felt with Professor Davies. Then, she remembered something important. Her birthday was coming up. It was a big one, too. 18. A milestone. A turning point. An idea began to form in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, her birthday could be the key to unlocking the mystery of Professor Davies' sudden change. Maybe it could be a way to break through the wall he had built, to remind him of the connection they had shared. She started to plan. She wouldn't throw a big party or make a grand announcement. Instead, she would be subtle, strategic. She would use her birthday as a way to test the waters, to see if there was still a flicker of interest beneath the surface of his professional demeanor. She imagined staying after class on her birthday, just like she used to. She would casually mention it, almost as an afterthought. "Oh, and Professor Davies," she would say. "You know today's my 18th, right?" She practiced the line in her head, trying to find the right tone. Not too eager, not too shy, just casual. As if it were no big deal, but also, as if it were a little bit important. She knew it was a risky move. It could backfire spectacularly. He could ignore her completely, or even worse, he could be annoyed by her boldness. But she was willing to take the risk. She needed to know if there was still a chance, if there was still something between them. She told Chloe about her plan. Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure that's a good idea, Maya?" she asked. "He's your professor, remember? And he's been pulling away for a reason." I know, Maya said. "But I have to try. I can't just let it go without knowing if there's something there. And if there isn't," she added quietly, "then at least I'll know for sure." She knew it was a long shot, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her birthday was a chance, maybe her only chance, to get things back to the way they were. Or maybe, to take them somewhere new. The days leading up to her birthday felt like an eternity. Each class was a test of her patience, a reminder of the distance that had grown between her and Professor Davies. She waited, planned, and hoped. The morning of her birthday dawned gray and overcast, mirroring Maya's mood. She felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach as she got ready for class. It was now or never. She chose her outfit carefully, wanting to look good but not too flashy. She settled on a simple blue dress that flattered her figure without being too revealing. She spent extra time on her hair and makeup, wanting to feel confident and in control. When she arrived in class, Professor Davies was already there, setting up his notes. He glanced up at her, a flicker of something in his eyes, but quickly looked away. Maya's heart sank. It seemed like he was actively avoiding her. The class itself was a blur. Maya found it hard to concentrate on the lecture, her mind racing with anticipation and nerves. She kept glancing at Professor Davies, trying to gauge his mood, but he remained impassive, his face a carefully constructed mask of professionalism. He called on other students, avoiding her gaze. He told jokes, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He seemed like a different person, a stranger. Maya felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. Maybe Chloe was right. Maybe she had imagined the connection, the spark. Maybe Professor Davies had never felt anything for her at all. As the class drew to a close, Maya's resolve wavered. Maybe she should just forget about it. Maybe she should just accept that things had changed and move on. But then she remembered the feeling of being special, the warmth of his smile, the way he had made her feel seen. She couldn't give up without trying. She took a deep breath and waited for the other students to leave. One by one, they filed out of the classroom, until only she and Professor Davies remained. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Professor Davies began to gather his papers, his movements deliberate and efficient. He seemed determined to avoid her, to pretend that she wasn't even there. Maya knew that she had to act fast. This was her chance, her only chance. She stood up, her legs trembling slightly, and cleared her throat. It was time. "Professor Davies?" Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. He stopped gathering his papers and looked up, his expression unreadable. "Yes, Maya?" He said her name so formally, so distantly, that it almost broke her heart. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was actually happening, she felt like she was going to faint. She stammered, trying to remember the casual lines she had practiced. I just wanted to ask about the assignment for next week. It was a lie, of course. She knew perfectly well what the assignment was. But she needed an excuse, a reason to be talking to him. Professor Davies frowned slightly. I already went over that in class, he said, his voice cool and professional. Maya's cheeks flushed. She felt like a fool. I know, she said quickly. I wasn't sure about one thing. She made up a question on the spot, something about the symbolism in a particular poem. Professor Davies answered her question patiently, but his tone was still detached, impersonal. As he finished explaining, Maya knew she couldn't put it off any longer. She had to say something, anything, to break through the ice. She took a deep breath and looked him directly in the eyes. Actually, she said, her voice trembling slightly, there's something else I wanted to mention. Professor Davies raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. It's just that. Maya paused, her heart pounding in her chest. You know today's my 18th, right? The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Maya watched Professor Davies' face, searching for a reaction. For a flicker of recognition, a hint of warmth, anything. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at her, his eyes dark and unreadable. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Yes, Maya, he said. I know. Maya held her breath, waiting for him to elaborate. But he didn't. He just stood there, his expression still unreadable, his eyes locked on hers. The silence stretched on, punctuated only by the frantic beating of Maya's heart. She felt a surge of panic. Had she misread everything? Was she completely delusional? Then she saw it. A flicker of hesitation in his eyes. A tightening of his jaw. A barely perceptible shift in his posture. He hesitated. Just for a moment, but it was enough. Enough to give Maya hope. Enough to tell her that he wasn't as indifferent as he seemed. Well, she said, trying to sound casual, I just thought you should know. She paused, giving him an opportunity to say something, anything. But he remained silent, his gaze fixed on hers. Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. She had to push further. She had to break through the wall of professionalism that he had erected between them. She took a small step closer to him, closing the distance between them. She watched his reaction carefully, gauging his response. He didn't move. He didn't step back. He just stood there, his body tense, his eyes wide. Maya took another step, closing the gap even further. She could feel his breath on her face, smell the faint scent of his cologne. He still didn't move. The air crackled with electricity. Maya felt a sense of power, a sense of control. She was pushing the boundaries, testing the limits. And he was letting her. She knew that she was playing a dangerous game. She knew that she was risking everything. But she couldn't stop herself. She had come too far. She was close enough now to see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the tiny lines around his mouth. She could see the conflict raging within him, the battle between his professional obligations and his personal desires. And in that moment, she knew that she had won. She had broken through the wall. She had reached him. Now, it was up to him. What would he do? Would he push her away? Or would he finally give in to the feelings that she knew he had been trying to suppress? The answer, she knew, was just a breath away. Professor Davies' silence was a heavy blanket, smothering the air between them. The ticking clock seemed to amplify the tension, each tick a hammer blow against Maya's fragile hope. She could see the battle raging within him, the conflict between what he wanted and what he knew he should do. His eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape, a way out of the situation. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, as if unable to find the right words. Maya could almost hear the frantic thoughts swirling in his head. This is wrong. I can't do this. She's a student. I'm her professor. This is completely inappropriate. Star. But she could also sense the other thoughts, the ones he was trying so hard to suppress. Asterisk, she's beautiful. She's intelligent. She makes me feel alive. I want her. Star. The conflict was etched on his face, a road map of his inner turmoil. Maya felt a strange mix of pity and excitement. She knew that she was putting him in an impossible situation, but she couldn't help but feel a thrill at the power she held over him. She waited patiently, letting the silence do its work. She knew that he was at a crossroads, that he had to make a choice. And she knew that whatever choice he made would change everything. Suddenly, Professor Davies took a step back, breaking the spell. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear his head. He ran a hand through his hair, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. Maya, he said, his voice hoarse. I don't think this is appropriate. The words hung in the air, cold and final. Maya's heart sank. Had she been wrong? Had she completely misread the signs? But then, he looked at her again, his eyes filled with a mixture of longing and regret. And Maya knew that it wasn't over yet. I need to think about this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I need time. He turned away from her, his back to her, and walked towards the window. He stood there for a long moment, staring out at the gray, overcast sky. Maya waited, her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know what he was going to say. All she knew was that everything was about to change. Maya watched Professor Davies as he stood by the window, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed. He looked defeated, lost. She felt a pang of sympathy for him, but she also knew that she couldn't back down now. She had come too far. She took a step towards him, closing the distance between them once again. He didn't turn around. He remained frozen, his gaze fixed on the outside world. Professor Davies? Maya said softly. He didn't respond. Maya took another step, until she was standing right behind him. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, the tension vibrating in the air. Professor, she said again, her voice barely audible. He finally turned around, his eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and despair. Maya, he said, his voice hoarse. Please don't do this. Do what? Maya asked, her voice innocent. You know what? He said, his eyes pleading. This is wrong. This can't happen. Why not? Maya asked, her voice challenging. Because I'm your professor, he said, his voice strained. And you're my student. There are rules. There are boundaries. But what if I don't care about the rules? Maya asked, her eyes locking on his. What if I want this? Professor Davies shook his head, his expression tortured. You don't know what you want, he said. You're young. You're confused. I know exactly what I want, Maya said, her voice firm. I want you. She reached out and gently touched his cheek, her fingers tracing the lines of his face. He flinched at her touch, but he didn't pull away. Don't you feel it, Professor? Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't you feel the connection between us? Don't you want this too? Professor Davies closed his eyes, his face contorted with pain. Please, Maya, he said, his voice pleading. Please stop. But Maya didn't stop. She couldn't stop. She had come too far. She had waited too long. She leaned in closer, her lips just inches from his. Tell me you don't want me, she whispered. Tell me you don't feel anything for me. Professor Davies opened his eyes, his gaze filled with a mixture of desire and fear. He looked at Maya, really looked at her, for the first time. And in that moment, Maya knew that she had won. He wanted her. He wanted her more than anything. And suddenly, professionalism felt more like an obstacle than a rule. The world seemed to shrink, focusing only on the space between them. Professor Davies' breath hitched, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He looked down at Maya, his eyes filled with a storm of emotions, desire, fear, guilt, and something else, something that looked almost like hope. He knew he was playing with fire. He knew that what he was contemplating was wrong, dangerous, potentially career-ending. But he couldn't deny the pull, the magnetic force that drew him to Maya. He had tried to resist it, to push her away, to maintain his professional distance. But she had chipped away at his defenses, slowly but surely, until he was left with nothing but his raw, unadulterated desire. He thought of his career, the years he had spent studying and working to achieve his goals. He thought of his reputation, the respect he had earned from his colleagues and students. He thought of the consequences, the scandal, the potential for ruin. But then he looked at Maya again, at her beautiful face, her sparkling eyes, her confident smile. He thought of the way she made him feel, the way she challenged him, the way she made him feel alive. He had been so lonely for so long, hiding behind his books and his lectures, afraid to let anyone get too close. And then Maya had come along, like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. He knew that he shouldn't. He knew that he couldn't. But he wanted her. He wanted her more than he had ever wanted anything in his life. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the temptation, trying to regain control. But it was no use. The desire was too strong, too powerful. He opened his eyes again, his gaze locking on Maya's. He saw the question in her eyes, the challenge, the invitation. And he knew that he couldn't resist any longer. He had to make a choice. He had to decide whether to follow his head or his heart. Whether to do what was right or what felt right. And in that moment, as he looked at Maya, he knew that he had already made his decision. The rules, the boundaries, the consequences, they all seemed to fade away, replaced by a single, overwhelming desire. He reached out and gently cupped Maya's face in his hands, his fingers trembling slightly. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. And then, he leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, a gentle exploration of uncharted territory. But as their lips met, something shifted. The tentativeness faded, replaced by a surge of passion, a desperate need. Professor Davies deepened the kiss, his hands tightening on Maya's face, his body pressing against hers. He had waited so long for this moment, had fought so hard against it, and now that it was finally happening, he couldn't hold back. Maya responded in kind, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body melting into his. She had dreamed of this moment for weeks, had imagined it 1,000 times in her head. And the reality was even better than she had ever imagined. The kiss went on and on, a silent conversation, a desperate plea. It was a confession of unspoken desires, a release of pent-up emotions. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated bliss. But even as they kissed, a part of Professor Davies was screaming inside. Asterisk, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is so wrong. Star. He knew that he should stop, that he should pull away, that he should end this madness before it went too far. But he couldn't. He was lost in the moment, consumed by his desire. Finally, with a supreme effort of will, he broke the kiss. He stepped back, his chest heaving, his face flushed. He looked at Maya, his eyes filled with a mixture of longing and regret. Maya, he said, his voice hoarse. I can't do this. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Maya's heart sank. Had she been wrong? Had she misread everything? What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling. I mean, I can't, he said, his voice strained. I can't be with you. I'm your professor. It's wrong. It's impossible. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. She had come so close, had felt so sure, and now it was all slipping away. But I thought you wanted me, she said, her voice pleading. I thought you felt something for me. I do, Professor Davies said, his voice filled with anguish. I do feel something for you. But that doesn't change anything. I can't be with you. He turned away from her, his back to her, and walked towards the door. He paused for a moment, his hand on the doorknob. I'm sorry, Maya, he said, his voice barely audible. I'm so sorry. And then, he walked out the door, leaving Maya alone in the classroom, her heart broken, her dreams shattered. Maya stood there for a long time, the silence of the empty classroom pressing in on her. The echo of Professor Davies' words, "I can't do this," reverberated in her mind, a cruel reminder of her shattered hopes. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. She felt foolish, naive, and utterly heartbroken. She had risked everything, had laid her heart bare, and had been rejected. She sank into one of the desks, burying her face in her arms, and sobbed. She cried for the loss of what could have been, for the betrayal of her own feelings, for the pain of unrequited love. After a while, the tears subsided, leaving her feeling drained and empty. She lifted her head, her eyes red and swollen. The classroom looked different now, colder, more impersonal. The magic was gone. She knew that she couldn't stay there any longer. She had to get out, to escape the memories that haunted the room. She stood up, her legs shaky, and walked towards the door. She paused for a moment, looking back at the empty classroom. She knew that she would never forget this day, this moment. It would forever be etched in her memory, a reminder of her first heartbreak. She opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. The hallway was empty, silent. She walked towards the exit, her steps slow and deliberate. As she walked, she thought about Professor Davies. She wondered if he was feeling any guilt, any regret. She wondered if he would ever think about her again. She knew that she would never forget him. He had been her first love, her first infatuation. He had opened her eyes to a world of literature and ideas. He had made her feel special, seen, and understood. But he had also broken her heart. She reached the exit and pushed open the door. She stepped out into the gray, overcast day. The air was cold and damp, and a light rain was falling. She took a deep breath, trying to clear her head. She knew that she had a long road ahead of her. She had to pick up the pieces of her broken heart and move on. She had to find a way to forgive Professor Davies, to forgive herself, and to